Hey, what's up guys, it's Maniacra, and today I thought I'd show off my drawing practice and what I do for study. So for the past 5 months or so, I've been actively trying to get better at drawing and painting and regain those skills that I used to have, but I kind of stopped when I learned 3D. So I'm just going to talk while I do this sketch here, and usually I start off by blocking in the angle of the shoulder tilt and also the pelvic tilt, because most poses are going to have contrapposto, where one side of the body is stretching while the other side is compressing. And this just lays down, just a placement where the basic layout of where things are. You're not locked in, keep it kind of loose and gestural and flowy. This isn't like a pure gesture, like I'm not really pushing it too hard, just kind of softly kissing the paper and making marks that I fully intend to readjust and lock in. Generally speaking, you want to kind of work broad, and then as you get work more and more on it, you want to get more precise. So general to specific is the approach that I'm doing. So yeah, I am working from reference here. I'm trying to do one of these every day. So it's not just drawing, I like to render it out as well. And in place of having like a life model, working from photos is really great. Used to be that I would go to actual life drawing. Back in school, we would draw anywhere from 3 to 8 hours a day from a life model, and I love drawing live in front of a model. But in place of that, there's like an endless supply of photos on the internet, so just draw from those. But I want to emphasize that I'm not trying to copy the photograph, and I think that's something that a lot of people I won't say get wrong, but like they kind of don't realize. They think that just because it looks real, then it's a good drawing. I mean, maybe, depends what your goal is. For me, when I'm doing practice, I'm really just trying to obviously work on everything: form, gesture, movement, just your hand-eye coordination, but really I'm trying to focus on anatomy. I'm focusing on anatomy, I'm focusing on the forms of the body and how light plays on those forms. And one of the reasons, in addition to just the satisfaction of, making a 2D drawing, this is really good practice for me when I'm doing 3D, when I'm doing 3D modeling. So I'm a character artist, and practicing anatomy in 3D is one thing, but there's something really freeing about being able to practice your anatomy, just with a pencil and paper. Like, you can be anywhere, you could be at the kitchen table, you could be out at a restaurant, whatever, and you can just be scribbling, doodling, practicing your anatomy. So that is why I think it's super important to have 2D skills in your pocket in addition to your 3D, is that you're not always going to be at a computer with ZBrush able to sculpt or Blender or whatever. Maybe you have an iPad, maybe you have a tablet of some kind, and it just doesn't work for me to like bust that out and start sculpting in those programs. It's just easier to draw. Like, it's just so much easier to draw. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm just practicing. And I think ultimately, when you work professionally, you give notes on 3D models in 2D form. Like, you'll get paintovers or whatever from the art director, or even fellow artists, and it really is just a language and a tool, 2D I'm talking about, to communicate. So it really is one and the same. Like, I pretty much said it in every video in the past like little while, that 2D and 3D are very closely related. They shouldn't really be seen as like completely separate things. Another reason why I want to get more into 2D is because it's so much faster to produce. Like, I can do a drawing in an hour or two, right? But a 3D model takes days, weeks, months, like half a year, whatever. It's too slow. It's just too slow. And I think just to be able to get some instant gratification is just really rewarding as an artist. It's just another reason why I think it's important to practice 2D. You get that much quicker feedback. And there we go. The lasso tool is probably the strongest tool in digital. Just the ability to make small, 10, 20 small degree changes, rotating the head or extending the length of the torso or something. In digital, it's so easy to do. So, it's awesome. Trying to get it all like accurately down on a sheet of real paper is much harder, because you have to kind of use some other tools, negative space, things to help block out where things should go. But in digital, you kind of can be kind of lazy about it, and it feels a lot better too. I'm working inside of ClipStudiopaint because I just love this program. I really think it's a program for artists. Photoshop is huge for digital painters in the industry, and it was the first program that I learned to digital paint on back in like 2007 or something. But really, Photoshop is not like specifically meant for painting and drawing. Like, it really was a photo editing program that kind of became a digital painting tool, but they don't really have a ton of features by default in Photoshop that kind of lends themselves to the artist toolkit for painters. So I actually just prefer ClipStudiopaint because it does have things like that. The brushes are great. Probably one of my favorite features of ClipStudiopaint are the blending brushes. The blending tools are just incredible for smudging or smearing or blending between colors. In this particular painting, I'm not doing color because I was just trying to focus on values. Every day I've been painting color, and so I was like, you know what? I really should just focus on black and white today. A lot of people like to start their painting in grayscale, so black and white, and then colorize and add color to it after, so that their value structure is good, their hierarchy is good. You can do that, but I honestly just don't enjoy that method of painting. I don't like to colorize a black and white image, and then I'd rather, if I'm gonna paint with color, I'd rather just go straight into it and balance the values with the colors as I'm painting with color. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just blocking out the terminator edge of like the form, so like the darkest edge, and then the shadow usually fills up with light. So really, like, for that illusion of kind of light filling in the space, the darkest edge is not like the farthest away from the light source. It's actually like just where the form turns enough so that you get that terminator edge, the dark shadow. And then instead of having it just be black all the way through, you allow bounce light to kind of fill it. So like, I'm not going to try and pretend that I'm some master painter or something. I'm just trying to show you what I'm thinking as I'm painting this. And what I'm doing here is I'm just blocking out a dark background against the brightest parts of the body, so that there's that contrast. Because if you have like a really bright butt cheek and then they have a white background, it's not gonna feel as bright. So you add this kind of dark background just to give it some contrast. And then in areas of the body that fall into shadow, then obviously you don't need that black background. In fact, it wouldn't read as well, the form. So what I'm doing is I'm just allowing the sketch to have some contrast in the brightest areas, on the brightest sides of the body. And this is like, these are art hacks. You can do this stuff. Like, there's no one telling you that you have to do like a full background or anything. So and typically what I usually start with when I'm rendering, sorry, I completely forgot to mention all this, is that I'll try and pick out like the darkest parts of the image. So like in this particular case, like right under the butt cheek, kind of going to the thigh, that's probably the darkest part of the image. The other one was her left scapula, shoulder. That was kind of the other darkest part. So like, I like to identify the darkest parts of the image, and then from there you kind of pull out into the lighter areas. You know that everything else is going to be lighter than those key areas, so having those darkest points locked down is nice. And I try not to use like pure black. You kind of want to go a couple steps above pure black, but whatever. The point is that I just want it to be kind of punchy. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple, kind of messy. I was kind of experimenting with some brushes. I was trying to make the drawing feel more traditional. I've been looking for like a brush that kind of replicates that feeling of drawing with the side of your pencil, to kind of get that charcoal, grainy, wide kind of feeling. But all the brushes that I downloaded didn't quite work, so I might have to make my own brush to kind of get it exactly what I want. But I'm not saying this was super successful, but the goal was to try and make it kind of feel a little bit traditional and kind of rough and sketchy. Like, I kind of like that. Like, it feels more alive. One of the things that I've really started to embrace over the last few months, because I am training with a master artist named Alberto Ruiz. I've been doing every night. We've been doing classes, and he's really kind of allowed me to embrace imperfections. Like, I used to kind of, which is weird because it's a weird thing to be like, oh, I don't want any mistakes in my drawing, but actually it's not even mistakes, it's just imperfections actually make something feel alive. And I've really started to embrace that. And I love that kind of feeling of not being too tight, So what is tight? Like, I just mean, if you look at like a key art poster for a video game or a movie or something, and there's like an animated character, those digital paintings, those covers will typically be extremely tight. So there'll be like no, you don't see any rough work. It's all just like completely sealed off, formed, everything's clean, polished. It looks good, but ultimately, I think for kind of more sketchy personal art, it just has a lot more life to it, and you can kind of feel that connection to the artist when you see the rough work, or you can kind of see what they were thinking or whatever. So adding little hints of imperfection in your work can make it feel a little bit more alive, and that's kind of what I was going for. So I try not to overwork things. I think that's like always a danger for me personally, is that I tend to like overwork my drawings, which means I fuss too much or I put too much emphasis on things. And really, sometimes you can just leave things simple. Like, I didn't actually need to draw all those toes right there, because they don't even look like toes. They just look like little squares. Maybe that's something I should have left a little bit more ambiguous, a little bit more vague, and just leave that up to the imagination as to what's there. Everybody knows that there's toes there. So I probably kind of don't really nail the feet or the hands in this, but that was kind of the point. Is I think the key focus for this particular drawing was the torso. Like, I was really happy with how the rib cage felt. It's not even how it looks. It's more just how the rib cage feels. It feels good. So yeah, I was happy with that. And I just want to emphasize, 3D is cool, but I've actually just been really bored of 3D lately. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I used to be so enamored with 3D, and I'm really glad I took the time to convert from a 2D artist to a 3D artist. But lately, 3D just has not been speaking to me, and I don't know why. And drawing, something about it is just so primal. Just like the ability to just make marks, and it doesn't even have to be anything fancy. Like, literally, if you had a stick with mud on it and a cave wall and you could just start drawing, something about being able to make marks that then becomes an image that other people can see is just extremely satisfying. It feels really powerful, really empowering. And that is part of the reason why I'm trying to continue practicing 2D. And the 3D stuff is just becoming, I don't know what it is, something commercial about it. And I'm actually really tired of all these artists that are just jumping on trends. Like, a new TV show comes out and it's like, oh, hey, look, a fan art for this thing. I don't know, man. Like, everyone's just trying to become famous, as opposed to just like doing art that I think they really care about or speaks to what they're interested in as a person. Everyone's just kind of doing things like cheap tricks. Like, I get it. Like, people are trying to make a living, people are trying to survive. So I guess I shouldn't be too hard. But I'm really tired of seeing art that I don't think the artist actually cares about. And the average person won't notice that. They'll just be like, oh yeah, that's a sick drawing. But an artist can usually tell when a fellow artist is doing something out of love versus doing it out of, I don't know, attention. And yeah, I think that's just something to be aware of, is that like people like me do notice it, guys. Like, if you're just putting out art that is for clicks or whatever, I guess do it, but don't forget to do art that is just for you. You don't have to share everything that you draw. You don't have to, and you don't have to do stuff that is just for attention. Just do the art that you personally love. I think that's important to say. So again, I didn't really want to overwork the hands. I was just keeping it really loose. Like, they're pretty bad, but that's the point. Like, I was okay with it. Like, I'm kind of just happy with that, leaving it as a sketch. Like, I was debating leaving some of those rough lines in, and I think I do in the end leave some of them in. So at this point, we're just full on rendering. The forms are pretty much there. It's kind of just a matter of smoothing it. And now I'm going to start attacking the hair. The hair is always something that, to me, I try not to think about it too hard. Like I don't actually have like a proper process for how I attack the hair. It's just kind of, what does it feel like? You know, just kind of, I basically keep it very gestural, and a lot of the hair that I do is kind of just implied. And because she's a blonde on top of already a light body, you know, I was having this conflict where the hair wasn't kind of standing out enough from the body. And I think this is probably like a point where I didn't control my values enough that the body and hair weren't separated. Like I probably should, basically I'm saying is I think the body probably should have been a little bit darker, and I should have reserved some of the higher values for just the brightest parts. So for example, the hair should probably stand out. In the end, I think it works out, but if I was really being good, like I probably should have separated the value structure a little bit more. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of, you know, emphasizing the forms, the roundness of the form, and also kind of bridging the forms. So, you know, one of the things that, you know, you have to account for is you can look at anatomy books and like all that stuff, but one of the things that we don't really account for that you do see a lot of in life is actually fat. So you have to account for, you know, the softening of forms, the transition from like the gluteus maximus to the thigh there. I was softening out that transition. It's not like a hard block unless you were being super stylized. There actually is, you know, fat to soften those forms and you know, create more of a bridge, more of a connection between the parts, because the body is one unit. But you know, even though we're thinking about the muscles and stuff as individual components, ultimately everything is one unit. So you kind of have to soften things a little bit. Also, I kind of apologize for all the rotating of the image, and also the fact that the drawing canvas is kind of off to the side. I'm working on a huge 32-inch Cintiq. This probably doesn't make for the most pleasant watching experience. One of the things I don't think people realize is, you know, how much anatomy artists have to know. It's pretty amazing. I've learned a lot from teachers, and these guys, it's no joke. They know everything about the body. They know all the muscles, all the bones, how the forms change in different positions. In this case, I'm using a reference, so it's not like I have to know all that stuff, but it does help to be aware of anatomy. So definitely, I'm always practicing anatomy. So we're kind of coming to the end here. I'm just putting up the finishing touches, you know, just adding a suggestion of a shadow. Don't want to do too much. Again, just trying to keep it rough and sketchy. And one of the things that, you know, just on the topic of embracing imperfection, I used to think like, I want to make this drawing perfect and then, you know, clean it up and stuff. But my new philosophy is, I'll get it perfect on the next drawing. I'm going to be done with this one and we'll just move on to the next. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Again, just a sample of my daily practice. Have a good one.